that I wanted to ask is why architecture?
Yeah, see, Rituparna, a lot of decisions we make in life are made by some others. And then you get into the flow and things happen. So it was my father who was a sculptor, who was teaching sculpture in BHU, Banaras Hindu University. He had set up the department of or faculty of visual arts. And when he was studying for his master's in US, he came into contact with a newer profession besides being engineering or medical. Still in 60s, that was still people wanted to do engineering or medicine, and they haven't changed it even now. But at that time, he saw design and architecture, and he felt when his daughter grows up, she should study architecture.
And when did you fall in love with architecture?
That's a good question. That's only after joining Ahmedabad. But I studied 3 years of civil engineering in Nigeria. My father had gone there to set up a department of fine arts. So at that time, in the Polytechnic, there was no architecture. And so I joined civil engineering. So I studied civil engineering. So it was then quite easy to get into architecture. But the School of Architecture, CEPT, Ahmedabad, really made you feel that that's a great profession to be in. The atmosphere there, the way the building was designed. Generally, the city of that time, of Ahmedabad, was just wonderful to be amongst one of the best architecture in India, like IIM Ahmedabad, or even our school. It's just beautiful architecture, which one didn't see anywhere else in India.
I'm always intrigued by this word called space, be it the outer or even a small space around me. I always feel a particular space tells a story. So when a person like you, who has dealt with space for so many years, how do you see space? What actually comes to your mind?
So see, the layer of ecology is different from conceiving a space.
Yes.
And it's quite like your English literature. How do you make a story? If you read any literature, in fact, it may not be English, it could be anywhere, any stories or anything. It's at that moment of time, you are part of that page. So now when you conceive of spaces, we are part of that space. We are walking that space. The times when I would have ridden, I used to have a motorbike, and I would have ridden kilometers while I'm thinking of the space or the details and stuff without knowing where I've been. So I just stopped after that, because that means I'm too distracted. So it's just there. And that space comes to you in terms of light. And that's like cinema. Where do you want that light to come from? Okay. And then, in fact, we also have to feel the air. Very important for us. And air, space, heights. And how will you feel? What would you see? And where would you sit? The things like these keep evolving around you. The space is basically, how will you occupy it? Now, it can turn into a very mathematical cube. Now, I have, say, 3 meters by 3 meters, because I can put a bed here, a cupboard here, and it will be 3 meter high, and it's over. But it is an imagination which is very difficult to convey as to how it happens, where you go beyond the number. You go beyond the number game of saying, okay, I can get this much here. So That is not so very easy to describe. It's ephemeral. It's quite ephemeral. And
Absolutely.
it's interesting because how I conceive and how another architect will conceive will be very different. You might just feel, how did that person do so well? I wouldn't have thought of it. And that happens.
That reminds me of, yeah, yeah, please, sorry,
Yeah,
continue.
it's just like, string of words.
Yeah, yeah.
Various poets or writers will get it differently. And it's the same words, but a certain story will be so different from another one.
When you say this, ma'am, cities are not just buildings alone, what do you actually mean?
Oh, well, it comes in a context where you you put the cities and say this much can be built in this much part of the land. So you have an area, let's say 1,000 square meters. So there are laws called floor area ratio. Then you leave some setbacks and say, okay, this much can be built. That's all people talk about. Do that, and then another building, because construction is part of the economy. It's a huge part of the economy. And so people would just keep pushing for construction to happen. In fact, now you see cities don't look very different from each other. All of them look quite similar, unfortunately. But you have to live there. So important is to start looking at what you really need for living. And one is saying healthy living. And that's why air and water become very important for the people. So think of all that when you're thinking of a city. Don't think of the city planning saying that this is the industrial zone, so you can build so much. This is the commercial zone, this is this. And that's what is happening in the larger imagination right now. So it came with that context. Think of, if I put here, will I have enough trees for, say, 1,000 people who are going to stay there? Will I be able to put, say, 10,000 trees in that land? Because that's the amount of oxygen we would need. One
Right.
tree, sorry, 10 trees per person. Is that possible in future? Is that possible that I'll have enough water when 1,000 people are going to stay there and they don't have to go 200 kilometers, 100 kilometers away to bring the water for their survival? Think of that and think of the people. How will the people move around? Will they be able to walk? Our cities are getting terribly unfriendly to people. They're made for cars.
A city.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that reminds me of one of the recent book I'm reading is Sophie's World, where
Mm.
the writer in his introduction writes that now it is a time, it is not only, we don't just have to think about ourselves, we have to also start thinking about our future generation,
Yes. Yeah.
because the kind of things we are doing, maybe we
Hmm.
will survive this
Hmm.
by little chance, but
Hmm.
what will happen to your future generation? And we have to be very, very careful, I guess, in that sense. uh,
Hmm.
from this, I want to ask something, because in one of your interviews, you told, the interviewer, I don't remember
Hmm.
which one, but in that, you told that many a times you give your student a task that, okay, go out and explore your surroundings, because you feel that every kilometer of your surroundings tell a different kind of India. So that part I found very interesting, that it is so diverse, so different, that on one side maybe you have high-rise building, but just on the other side there is something else altogether where you can't even connect.
Yeah.
And yeah, and from that I just want to ask that when you are designing something, ma'am, any space or any place, or what all the things you keep in mind, what are the things you put attention to? Because I somehow feel that somebody like you will be more conscious of everything that is there on you're going to put on that space. It is just not about design, but it is just not about the form, but it is also the function, right? So I want to know
You're right.
that.
So this was, I used to take studio, that is a design studio, and where it was that the student walk 1 kilometer radius of their own homes and see what's happening. That was the important factor. Basically, architecture is a lot of assimilation of what one sees. And that's mind's eye, not merely visual. It's also what one absorbs within. So any architect, when they're thinking about, yes, materials and like we talked about light and everything which would happen. But when we think, and I think many of the conscious architects, it's not just us, but also take into account how will we build that structure. In our case, because we've been working with a lot of people from a long time, for past 30 years, many of the teams will also think, could this person build this? But you get a lot of time, Rituparna, the project is taken because one of the contractors doesn't have a project. So you figure that out and give work, because that's a team of people who should have work, who know this kind of construction, and they should have work. So you're looking at the place. What kind of materials will that place give you? What are the kind of people skills possible? And what more can you offer through your design to something in a very subversive way, changing the normal? Is that possible by doing some stuff? And leave that imprint, and slowly some others will pick it up and follow it up. So that's an important factor. So a project in Palghar, which was near Mumbai, we have worked there for past 13 years, and we kind of finished working there. When we started, there were no earth buildings. We brought the idea of earth building. The clients wanted it. So it's not always this diva of an architect who gives the idea. The client also wanted it. And now there are teams which make earth blocks, and there are teams, and the architects are able to use their expertise and do it. So now what we really like is, from burning of bricks, it has become earth blocks. So it's a different way of working. It's a lot more healthier compared to burning of bricks. If you ever go to any brick kiln, it's a horrible space to be in. Here, there is a lot more agency with the people who will make the blocks. So how do you get into spaces which are otherwise not as an architect who will be doing it? So we were talking about water. It becomes very important for us to ask, what will you do about the water you would need to live in the building? So we talk about, how will the building live? It will take some fresh stuff. It will give out polluted water or air, but it should be something which goes back to the nature. So you talked about, how will you treat your wastewater? That becomes part of it. How will you build? Where will you get materials from? Where are the people? And then water, then energy. How do you design your roofs to be able to take photovoltaics? How will you design your building? So you have to know, when do you get the best wind from which direction? You design for that. So architecture is extremely complex. Form is a result of tackling all these complexities. And you have to make people live in it. They have to be happy.
That actually reminds me of reverse engineering. You actually have to think of the final product, and then you have to reverse your ideas. Otherwise, if you're just building without thinking your final product and how it is going to affect the surroundings, then it will be just another building, creating some mess, right?
Yeah. And that is what we have to fast forward and do. Every architect has to do. Because 47% of GHG emission is from buildings.
Yes, yes.
And in that 50%, about 27% is from the existing stock itself. So one is talking about global.
Yeah.
Luckily, in India, we still have lots to build. So we are in the phase where our new stock has to be in such a manner that it will reduce the GHG emission. And so we
Right.
have to think about it. And that is the future. When you, Ritu, say that what will we leave for future, you are part of that future. We are the ones who are gone, but you are part of that future.
No, I always think about my nephew and niece, that what
Yes,
we are going
yeah,
to
yeah.
lead. I mean, we are putting them to the best school, best this, best that, but then where is the air to breathe? That kind of troubles me sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, what happens is you'll have to be also aware of how the society is changing.
yes.
Okay. Well, let's say 70 years back, before the independence, many children died of drinking milk because it was boiled in a casa, I forget what's the English, bronze, I think it's brass, yeah, in that, and that would make it poisonous. Until that was known, or there were other diseases, cholera, we rarely hear about those. So mankind has always tried to improve.
Yes.
We
And
have to be
yeah,
positive about it. Our population will stabilize, will reduce. What is right now wrong is that we are not looking at things in a scientific manner. And that is the responsibility of your generation. You have to change that, and you have to really ask for everything to be scientific.
yeah,
Let it be validated by science,
100.
not by some myths.
No. Because, ma'am, I think that human evolution has always talked about scarcity, that we have come from, that kind of thing. But now we are dealing with abundance, actually. Everything is more than maybe somewhere we require, and somewhere we get so entangled in that abundance. And we always feel that maybe the future will be same, but no, it will not be if you're not being caring enough to,
Yeah.
take
Yes,
care
you're
of
right.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you have to be, you're right that we have abundance, but the abundance is for few. So
Yes.
now you have to be sharing. Because if your next door person is not going to get a meal, there's no use you having
100%.
5 days meal in your fridge.
True. True.
So how do you share?
From this point, I want to come to Biome. So in 1991, you have built this organization, Vishwanath sir, and you might have started Biome, if I'm not wrong. I mean, whatever little I've read about it,
Yeah.
we just wanted to understand what was the idea, what was the big why behind Biome.
So I started in 1991. Vishnath was working with Hutco, and I started on my own. Uh, it for the lack of any creative imagination, it was just called Chitra Vishwanath.
Okay.
And 2000, Vishnath resigned from Hutco. He was working a lot on water, and we were working on architecture. We were working with earth. So and always we have worked with water and architecture all the time because Bangalore demanded that. We were working in outskirts where water wouldn't be there. So how do you now design that you will be much more independent from the vagaries of bore wells or some buying water, etc. So what was happening that we were working in these various issues besides being an architect, and also it was no longer a one-woman firm. I had no idea, Ritu. When I started, I'd never thought it will be so big and will be doing so much work. But it grew with like-minded people with us. And it became a team. And one of the persons also kind of commented that I don't want to be working in a place which is run by a name than by a team. And I thought that was very fair. I too don't like this name bit because it's very limiting. So that's when we were talking, and since we are working on passive buildings, water, energy, what would it be? So it's ecology of a place we work. That's how it was Vishwanath who came up with the name Biome. So Biome started in 2008.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But we made huge effort to obliterate this name associated with the architecture, but more and more as Biome.
Right.
It was quite a job to do that. I don't think only of Chitra Vishwanath as the architect, but Biome.
Ma'am, does architecture puts a lens of gender, or is it like similar? So if say what is I wanted to know your point of view, that whether when uh, a woman
Mm.
seeing a space, or a man seeing the same space, I do understand the biological difference and all stuff like that, but when the profession is architecture, will there be a different kind of perception to space?
That's a good question. It does happen. And I would say more than what's anybody, if they show the caring nature in the design, the way of design will be different rather than man or woman. But it changes. So it's not, there is a feminist viewpoint, but it doesn't have to be the gendered feminist viewpoint. It's a caring viewpoint. How do you do that? It's something which will be there.
And going little deeper into that, I know Vishwanath sir is very um, passionate about water and water saving, and how did he influence you to see things differently?
Oh, huge difference. So, well, in fact, before the water stuff, also because he was with Hutco, he had uh, got more exposed to what was happening in south of India. He was in Bangalore before I came, and also the changes in architecture which was happening while I was in Ahmedabad, but he was here and he was looking at works of Laurie Baker, what was happening in Bangalore with earth construction stuff. So he introduced me to all that when I came to Bangalore. So that was very important. And he's quite a maverick who would think a lot of time out of the box. So he's somebody who will give us idea. Why don't you think like this? And it's being always somewhere we always discuss stuff and also listen to each other. It's like when we made our house, I came here and I saw my neighbor's plot and there was this beautiful red earth. That's when I decided we'll have a basement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then when we were building, he said, why don't we have a mezzanine? And we did all that. And then afterwards, we studied, researched, and said, these are good things to do. But so, yes, it keeps on going on like that. Like there's rice growing on our terrace. That's because he decided, why not?
Wow.
Why everybody grows, cauliflower or cabbage or some things like that, but why not grow rice? So it's more than anything else. It's the attitude of why not.
Yes.
And I kind of complimented by working out details and things to happen.
Right.
So yeah, it's this way. It's always this kind of questioning and answering. Yeah.
Ma'am, what is earth building? If you have to explain it to somebody like me or the people, what is earth building? What are those eco bricks? How
Yeah.
they are made? and how that is making difference to spaces.
Yeah. So if you see behind me, I'm sitting in my basement in the house.
Okay.
In Bangalore, the soil has less clay content, more sand.
Okay.
So they don't make it doesn't the soil doesn't become a good brick even when you fire. Like if you're from Calcutta or UP, you get the soil which has lots of clay and they make fantastic bricks when you fire.
Okay.
That won't happen here. But because there's less sand, you can take it and even reduce the clay a little more by mixing more sand, or quarry does, and press it with a little, and put in a cement and press it, and you make something called compressed stabilized earth blocks. They're
Okay.
compressed, they're stabilized with cement or lime, and they're made with earth. So they are not burnt.
Right.
And mostly, in 99% of homes, we don't even plaster them.
Oh,
They're
okay.
brown. So my surroundings will be brown
Right.
and red. Maybe I should just carry this laptop and show you all above.
Will you be able to do it?
Yes, it's a laptop, so you can carry it. Yeah. Let me just check how much it's charged. Oh, yeah, it can be done. So you built with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So shall we move?
Yeah, please.
So this is the basement.
Yeah. Oh,
And if you, no,
yes.
how do I change to the back camera page?
No, that is
Right.
not possible on laptop, but we can see your. Is that the wall that you're talking about on your back?
Okay,
Brown one?
yes. So, yeah. So now you see small windows at the
Yes.
back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the space below it, so
Yes.
you see is a wall here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a stone wall. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is from the window to the floor here. We got that much of earth in
Okay.
this room.
Got it.
Okay. And with that, we built the house above. So the roof is also different. You
Okay.
can see the roof better
Yes.
above. So
Yeah.
now we're going up.
Wow.
Okay. Up. Okay. And we come
Okay.
to this is the space, the living room.
Right.
Okay, that's the kitchen. The
Yeah.
mess. I just finished cooking. And that's the living room.
Yes. So, are you talking about this bricks?
This wall, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
These bricks, okay. So
These are
that's
all
how
eco
the
bricks.
house is. Yes, these are all earth bricks.
Okay. Earth bricks. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and a roof is red.
Yeah.
That's also different. So the whole house is, in fact, brown, red, gray. Like that.
Does it
Now
affect the
behind you.
temperature also?
A bit, but not really very much. It affects the humidity. It reduces the humidity, which is good. So that
Right.
way it affects the temperature, but it doesn't really reduce the temperature because these are very highly compressed. So what we
Right.
call as U value isn't that high, but in Bangalore, we don't really get the heat from the walls. We get it from the roofs.
Yes. Thank
You
you.
guys
Thank
want
you.
to see the rice on the roof?
Sorry, ma'am?
We're growing rice on our terrace.
Oh, yeah. You just told me. Is that the out of box idea that you, sir, has?
Yes, yeah. I think this is a much better interview than boring interview just sitting down. Only thing is, it's in the night. Rice on the roof would have been great the daytime.
I have heard for the first time that somebody is growing rice on the roof. That's like
Yeah.
a new thing
So
altogether.
he got an award from Angela Merkel for growing rice, idea of growing rice on the roof.
Wow.
So
So
that's the
you,
rice.
so you guys grow your own rice. That's the thing.
No, not, we don't get that much.
Okay.
That's-
Oh, wow.
Can you see?
Yes,
see
yes,
the,
yes.
so that's the rice on the roof. That's a
Nice.
terrace.
This is beautiful. I think most
guys-
of the people kind of dream about such things, having such.
Yeah.
Thank you for
And this
sharing.
is all in a very small plot of land.
Right, right.
It's not a large land. So that's what we say. Ecological architecture within the city is important,
Yeah,
because most of us are going to live in the city in the
right.
next 20 years. So we have to change the whole idea of ecological architecture should be for the people,
Yeah,
for everybody, not elite, and then for the, what do you call it? It should be for the city.
true.
The city uses a lot less energy compared to a suburb and stuff. So it's always better to think of city. And you have more land left for agriculture, for water, for biodiversity.
Right.
Okay, I'm back in my
Yeah, yeah.
basement.
Thank you for sharing your space with us.
So
I know
it's
it
like
is. Yeah,
it's
but
become like a film now.
yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. Ma'am, what kind of value system you have always followed while running this organization? What kind of culture you have made sure that it stays in this organization?
So first of all, I'm quite hardworking. In terms of if I sit down to design, I'll work and do all that bit. But I'm lazy in terms of going and networking and getting work or stuff. I'd rather work hard and let the work speak for it. And I'm also lazy in terms of saying, okay, I need a lot of money just for myself and stuff like that, because that will involve a lot of work for me to do that. But it would be nice that some others take up the responsibility of that. So the idea of the office has been that it doesn't end with me. It's not be all and end all as Chitra Vishwanath. And best example of it was when in 2003 we went for 45 days to China. And it was still a young office, but we decided we had to travel, and we went to China because we were learning rainwater harvesting. They've done a lot of work in China. When we came back, and one of my most critical clients said, "We didn't even feel you were not there." And I said, "That's it.
That's a
We
compliment.
don't share the problems of the office, share the fun of the office, whatever happens, what one could do, share it as much as possible." And it's like completely sharing. So it gets doing that. And I'm very blessed, lucky with the team which has formed in the office.
Right.
And the whole idea is why it's good is it's not just because of money or something, but it's also because of perpetuating this idea, this philosophy.
Right, right.
And it's important to have the young people in the team and who are thinking more, because I might just get into a comfort zone of what works. Like all our parents, they will always tell you, no, this doesn't work. Before you give an idea, they would say this doesn't work.
Right.
Isn't it? I think that's very common with parents.
Yes.
Because they have the experience. So experience is good, but experience can also be something which is kind of it halts you. It puts roadblocks. So it's important you have people who haven't had experience, and then they will say something. It's like, okay, let's pick that up. So it's important. So that's the way I would like the future to be, in the office, at home, anywhere. And luckily, we are architects. If we do things structurally well, nobody's going to die or anything. So it's not like the medical stuff. So we can always make things happen. A lot of fun.
What's your relationship with money then?
No, frankly, I'd really like to have this whole basement full of money, but what is the use of it? You need money. Money is important. But unlike, I don't know if you've heard of Guru Wu from China, is a real estate guy who looks at different ways of increasing your money, who would say that happiness is 4 million pounds. It's there in New York Times, his interview has come. But you need money enough so that you should have good food, as you don't have to have unnecessarily great kind of food, but there should be money to be able to share and help people when they need it, if there's somebody. It's not that I'm to be like everybody, but there are certain people in life who can't really manage. If we can help them and they feel relieved of the stress which comes without money, that's good enough. And should have money to be able to travel. Travel is important. Like what Pico Iyer yesterday told in Bangalore Literature Fest. Travel is a very important part of life.
Yeah.
It's important. It's,
And
you
it teaches you stillness in a different way, as Iyer says.
Yeah. It was very interesting. No? Like I said, everything about Iran, and then when he went to Iran in 3 hours, he had much more knowledge than from what he read for 4 years or something. So yeah, travel is important. But this is what is important with that 1 kilometer radius project. The travel was within 1 kilometer, you'll find differences. Just there are tall buildings here and there are slums there. And there are places where with that experience, students said we would have never gone and seen. This is right next to us. We would have traveled till Paris and seen Paris, but we wouldn't have known that half a kilometer away, this is the world.
Because walking is kind of a meditation for me. So when I walk, I just feel something is happening. The whole surrounding is telling you something. And if you pay attention to the surroundings, they're telling something very unique, actually. We're almost at the end. So I have some questions, which is not about work, but which is about you. Who is your favorite philosopher, ma'am?
So it keeps changing.
I feel that it is Socrates.
So I like Stoics. Stoics are the ones which one would go for. But presently, I listen to. He's not exactly. I don't know what would you call him, philosopher, but more of a critique of climate change and the idea of climate change and the future. Dipesh Chakravarti. So I think he was with. He was born in Calcutta, but now he's in US.
Okay.
So you must hear him. Dipesh is somebody we must hear. And philosopher is Achille Mbembe. Achille, Achille Mbembe.
Okay.
So, Achille Mbembe he's in South Africa, but he's from Botswana, I think. Huh? He was, he also talks about climate change and also about the future from a perspective which is not exactly the white man perspective of philosophy. So that's why it's interesting to hear these two people and how it relates to Africa in Midway's case. And it's just simple one line is that the future should belong to everyone and everything. It's not only people, it's not only human. So, these two are the people I read most.
And ma'am, which country's architecture you love and you think it is according to the country's climate? Because somehow in India I feel that um, the kind of glass buildings I see all around, I don't find much purpose because there's too much sun out there, but I don't see the purpose of having so many glass windows and stuff that in India. So which country's architecture you like and you feel that, oh, this is so good for this country and it is absolutely appropriate for this country? Is there any architecture like that?
See, since modern architecture happened,
Hmm.
this is after the Second World War, which happened because of a philosophical reason where they said architecture has to be for the people, so the democracy and the form of governance change, and they wanted a different expression in architecture itself and for the people, for common people. It changed a lot of things. So you started using a lot more of concrete and yes, glass. But it's also important, if you don't have that glass, your daylight inside is very different.
That is
Now we are also in the building a lot more in the building. We
yeah.
spend the daytime in the building.
Yes.
Whereas earlier we went to a shop, we went to a field or not there inside. So you need glass.
Okay.
We vilify glass a lot, but we have to understand how and where. And it's, so it is that which is important, how and where it's put.
Hmm.
Right now, a lot of time glass is used because it's a much thinner material. So I get larger floor area to rent out instead of a wall
Okay.
thickness.
Oh. Okay.
Even in places where you should not put glass.
Right.
So you put the glass and then you put a curtain inside. But imagine it's 2 inches taken compared to 9 inches.
Yes.
So changes happening. But still, the architect cannot be the only person to be blamed for
Hmm.
the
True.
decisions. There are a whole lot of, you are also part of it.
Yes.
If you say, I will not use that building, then surely the people who make those buildings, people who put finances into those buildings will change, will look
Right.
at it differently. Now, I need light till quite a depth.
Yes.
I can't do it with a small window.
Yes.
So I need that. Secondly, yes, you will also then next is will vilify ACs.
Hmm.
But then are your roads without dust? Are your roads without any sound? Quiet? No, they're dusty, they're dirty. So you want a better air inside to work. AC came because you want a conducive area to work. It came in a factory first in US, not in an office. Then we picked up in the office. And we can't be inside this building and working while the city is under construction all the time. So my office at Biome, we changed the office in 2017, but my neighbors have been building constantly. And
Oh.
ours is not an air conditioned office. The amount of noise for the past 5 years we have suffered, it's too much.
Right.
So, what we need to do is that we are not, as India and many of the South Asian countries, we are still in this development paradigm.
Yeah.
We still are changing our cities, we still are growing our cities. But what we're not doing is that we're not learning from others who have gone through it, and which is a fallacy which most human development does it. It doesn't, it never learns. But we are also extremely economically concerned, not ecologically concerned. And that's what we said, water, air, water, and people, we don't concern. We just, how much money can we make?
Right.
And finally, we're extremely corrupt society. So the kind of work we do also isn't of good quality that it would stay longer and better and doesn't require maintenance all the time. if we can figure all those things out, which would require that we work conscientiously
Right.
with honesty, because whatever we do, we have limited resources for everybody in the world. So let's not waste that. In all that sense, it's going to be difficult to say which country I like the architecture of, because yes, I travel to Finland a lot and I love the buildings. But if you go to their office spaces, they look same as Mumbai or anywhere. They don't look any different. Because they've reached a level and they can have those comforts or the kind of finishes they want. So right now, it just, the architecture depends upon how they have looked at the context in terms of the place where it is, the time, the skill levels available, and how they made that building and enjoy it.
Right.
One of the best building I ever saw was when we were traveling from Raipur to Raigad in Chhattisgarh, and we were in this small hamlet, say because it wasn't a city or town or anything, it's a hamlet, just thick earth walls and beautiful street of, and it felt great. Oh, and I loved it, but I'd seen it in 1996 or 1995 or 1994. 24 Parganas. It's so beautiful. You walk through water and you have this little. So I think architecture is beautiful when it works with its context. When it doesn't, then it changes. It is not beautiful.
And I want to end this interview with this question. Who is your hero, ma'am? I always ask my guests this question.
Nobody, per se. No, this don't have this, because everybody's got flaws, and there is no one person. There's just many people who mold your life. So my parents, my in-laws, my husband, my family, and the whole team. It's so important. A plumber would be a hero for that day, or an electrician would be a hero for that day.
Right.
And some other day it will be the husband. So it could be anybody. It could be your baby. Right now it's my granddaughter. She's just 8 months old, and we cannot spend the day without seeing her.
Nice. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot for sharing your insights, your ideas. And I had all these questions. I was preparing all these questions. And while going through your interviews and all these questions kind of popped up in my mind. And I thought maybe, and it's a good day for me. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's just wonderful meeting you both. I never saw Aniket, but thank you, Pooja, for all your efforts.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Bye. See you.